What if I told you that some of the most emotional conversations you've ever had never actually happened? The argument where you finally said the perfect comeback. The future moment where everyone finally recognized your worth. The disaster your mind keeps preparing for over and over again. None of it is real. Yet your heart races, your emotions react, and sometimes those imaginary moments feel more powerful than reality itself. So why does your brain keep creating entire scenarios that never happen? The answer reveals something fascinating about how your mind works, and it might explain a habit you've had for years without ever understanding why. Why do you keep imagining scenarios that never happen? The psychology behind it. Have you ever been lying in bed, taking a shower, or walking alone when your mind suddenly creates an entire conversation out of nowhere? Maybe you're explaining yourself to someone. Maybe you're replaying an old argument, or maybe you're imagining a future moment where everything finally goes exactly the way you want. The strange part is that none of it is actually happening, yet the emotions feel completely real. You might feel anger, excitement, anxiety, embarrassment, or relief, all triggered by a situation that exists only inside your mind. And if you've ever wondered why this happens so often, you're not alone. Psychologically, this behavior is surprisingly common, but it's not just random daydreaming. In many cases, your brain is trying to accomplish something much deeper. Your brain is constantly running simulations. Think about it this way. Your brain is not designed only to react to reality. It's designed to predict reality. Long before something happens, your mind starts imagining possible outcomes. What if this goes well? What if it goes badly? What should I say? What might they think? Without realizing it, your brain continuously creates mental simulations. These simulations act like practice sessions for real life. In fact, psychologists often describe this process as mental rehearsal. Athletes use it before competitions. Musicians use it before performances. Public speakers imagine their presentations before stepping on stage. The brain rehearses situations because preparation increases confidence and reduces uncertainty. In moderation, this is incredibly useful. But for many people, the simulation system never fully turns off. And that's when imaginary scenarios start appearing throughout everyday life. Why your imaginary conversations feel so real. Here's something fascinating. Your brain doesn't always distinguish sharply between vividly imagined experiences and real experiences. When you imagine an argument, your body can become tense. When you imagine success, you can feel excitement. When you imagine rejection, anxiety can suddenly appear. Even though nothing is actually happening, your emotional system responds as if the situation matters. That's why a completely fictional conversation can affect your mood for hours. Your mind creates the story, your emotions react to the story, and your body follows along. It's almost like watching a movie where your brain is both the writer and the audience at the same time. The hidden emotional reason behind these scenarios. Most people assume they're imagining scenarios simply because they have a creative imagination. But psychology suggests there's often something deeper underneath. Many imaginary scenarios are actually attempts to resolve unfinished emotions. Maybe there's something you wish you had said. Maybe there's a conversation that never gave you closure. Maybe you're worried about something uncertain in the future. Your mind doesn't like unresolved situations. It naturally tries to complete them, so it creates imaginary versions where answers finally appear, where explanations make sense, where confusion becomes clarity. In a strange way, these scenarios are often your brain's attempt to create emotional resolution when reality hasn't provided it. The three most common types of imaginary scenarios. Interestingly, most imagined scenarios tend to fall into three major categories. 1. The argument scenario. This is probably the most common one. You replay a conversation and suddenly think of the perfect response, the perfect explanation, the perfect comeback. In your imagination, you finally say everything you wish you had said. These scenarios usually appear when someone feels misunderstood, frustrated, or emotionally unresolved. Your brain keeps revisiting the situation because it wants a different outcome. 2. The future success scenario. This is the version where you imagine achieving something meaningful, getting recognition, proving people wrong, receiving praise, reaching a major goal. These fantasies can be motivating because they allow you to visualize success before it happens. But sometimes they become so satisfying that they temporarily replace the effort needed to achieve those goals in real life. The mind enjoys the reward before the work is done. 3. The worst case scenario. This one feels very different. Instead of imagining success, your mind imagines disaster. You picture rejection, failure, embarrassment, misunderstandings. You prepare for every possible negative outcome. Ironically, this often comes from a desire to protect yourself. Your brain believes that if it can predict every danger, you'll be safer. The problem is that many of these dangers never actually happen, yet your mind continues preparing for them anyway. The surprising connection to social awareness. Here's where things become especially interesting. People who frequently imagine scenarios often share a common trait. They tend to think deeply about social interactions. They're highly aware of how conversations unfold. They analyze people's reactions. They notice subtle details. And they spend more time reflecting on social experiences than most people realize. Because of this, their minds naturally create additional simulations. It's almost like their brain is constantly running practice sessions for future interactions. Not because they're seeking attention, but because they're trying to understand people, relationships, and social situations more deeply. When imagination becomes a mental trap, at first, imagination feels helpful. It allows you to prepare, to process emotions, to explore possibilities. But there's a point where imagination can quietly become a trap. Because inside your imagination, everything is under your control. You say exactly the right thing. People respond exactly the way you expect. The outcome makes perfect sense. Reality doesn't work that way. Real conversations are unpredictable. Real people are complicated. Real life rarely follows a script. And sometimes the brain starts preferring the certainty of imagination over the uncertainty of reality. That's when mental simulations stop being preparation and start becoming escape. The most important psychological insight. Here's the truth. Imagination is not the enemy. In fact, it's one of the most powerful abilities humans possess. It's responsible for creativity, innovation, problem-solving, planning, and personal growth. The goal isn't to stop imagining. The goal is to recognize the difference between imagining and living. One prepares you for life, the other is life. And the moment imagination starts replacing action, growth begins to slow down. So if you often find yourself imagining conversations, future events, or scenarios that never happen, it doesn't necessarily mean anything is wrong with you. In many cases, it simply means your brain is highly active. You're analyzing, predicting, preparing, trying to make sense of a complicated world. But remember this. Your mind can create thousands of possibilities, yet the moments that truly shape your life will never happen inside those imagined stories. They happen in real conversations, real risks, real experiences. Because no matter how detailed the simulation becomes, reality will always contain something your imagination couldn't predict. And sometimes, that's exactly what makes life worth experiencing. If you found this psychological insight interesting, let me know in the comments. What type of imaginary scenario do you experience most often? Arguments, future success, or worst-case situations? And don't forget to subscribe for more fascinating psychology videos.